Hello, everyone, and welcome back to From the Stands, the college football gaming show. It is week 3. We are back for the 2024 season, and we are rolling. Third week here. We have, of course, Andy Hopper to my left on your screen and Mr. Tom Scavetta to my right. We'll jump right into the weekly recap here. We're going to go in order for this one. I know I like to shoot it to my boys before I give my takes, but we're going to go left to right for this one because there's some results that Mr. Scavetta might want to talk about. So, Andy, starting with you, give me your week 2 assessment, I guess, here.
Week 2 was fucking awesome, in my opinion. I think there were a lot of really good games, and I think we learned quite a bit about some teams at the top. I'll start with Texas and Michigan. It was one we talked about heavily on last week's show, and the Longhorns absolutely steamrolled the Wolverines at the Big House, 31-12 the final score. It was never really close. I mean, Texas just ran them into the ground. Not really on the ground, more so with the pass game, but just Michigan just had no answer. Ewers finished 246 yards for 3 touchdowns. Gunnar Helm, awesome name, finishes with 7 receptions for 98 yards and a touchdown. Texas proving they are one of the best teams in the nation, going to the defending champions' house and knocking them off. A quick shout out to Syracuse. They took care of business against Georgia Tech and got an upset at home at the Carrier Dome. Kyle McCord looked awesome, guys. 381 yards and 4 scores for him. Haynes King, not too bad for Georgia Tech either. He did everything he could to get the Yellow Jackets a win. 266 yards, 1 score through the air, 2 on the ground, and 67 yards there. Northern Illinois, obviously over Notre Dame. I'm going to let Tom handle that one. How about Iowa State coming back and taking down Iowa at home? Do the Hawkeyes have a quarterback problem, boys? Cade McNamara, it was not pretty. 99 yards, 13 for 29, 99 yards, 2 touchdowns. Johnson in the backfield had an awesome day for the Hawkeyes. 25 carries, 187 yards and 2 scores. The ground game works. The pass game, not so much. Awesome day for Noel, catching the football for the Cyclones. 133 yards and a score, and backed under center for the Cyclones, 272, 2 scores and an interception. And then finally, the last game I wanted to talk about, the game I was in attendance for, the Illinois Fighting Illini knock off the number 19 Kansas Jayhawks. The defense was unreal, boys. They got to Jaden Daniels, 3 interceptions. Xavier Scott, National Defensive Player of the Week. He had 2 picks, one of those being a pick 6, 8 tackles. He had a batted ball at the end. This guy was all over the place. Caden Fagan found the end zone. Zachary Franklin had 9 catches for 99 yards. The UTSA and Ole Miss transfer just made some incredible, a one-hand over-the-shoulder catch like this, a catch for a first down falling out of bounds. Just 2 huge plays, and we absolutely had to have them. Altmaier held his own. He was 16 for 25 for 192 yards, but he didn't make any mistakes, made big plays when the Illini needed him, and they walk out of Memorial Stadium a ranked win, a non-conference ranked win, something that does not happen a lot. The fans rushed the field, which I wasn't like 100% sure about, but you know what? I love it. I love it. And then a couple other ones I'll mention quickly. Kansas State really had to battle, came back and beat Tulane. And then one I know Tom was upset about, Arkansas, just absolutely blowing. They were up by like 4 scores almost, blowing that in overtime. They blew a cover. They were up. They were what, 7.5? And they lost by 8 in double overtime. I don't even know how the fuck that happens, but yeah. And then last thing I'll say is my parlay, of course, week 1 missed by 1 goddamn point. 1 goddamn point on my parlay. I needed 1 more point from Tennessee and NC State. The fucked up part is how my brain works, as I talked myself out of taking Tennessee spread, and they won by 41 points. So that would have covered by a mile. But yeah, that is my week 2 recap. Sorry, a little long there, boys.
No, we love it because like you said, there was a lot of good games there. I'll run through mine quickly. Obviously, Texas over Michigan. I think Michigan looks very depleted. I think we were all on Texas pretty hard last week over Michigan. They did show that they're a very, very good team, deserving of that number 3 spot. Michigan, they got a lot of work to do under new coach Ron Brown. So we'll see where they end up this season. But yeah, Texas looks really good. Yours looks really good. Alabama, real quick note on them. That game was close again with USF 2 years in a row. They needed the fourth quarter to outscore USF 21-3 to get that win over the Bulls. I know Saban's gone. I know it's a weird time for Alabama fans and the players who committed to play under him. But man, 2 years in a row, almost getting taken to the cleaners by USF. A little lucky to survive both those games. Oregon survives again 2 weeks in a row with a 3-point win over Boise State. We'll talk about them later. They are on our games to watch. Again, another survivor. Penn State only a 7-point win over Bowling Green. That's not another scoreline you
At
want to see.
home,
Yeah, if you're a top 10 at home. So yeah, some really interesting top 10 matchups there. And then, yeah, Miami absolutely rolling. I know it's FAMU, but they look like they might be a contender this year. What else we got? Oh, I mean, you covered the Tennessee game pretty well, but yeah, that was a massive blowout. I didn't realize that you hadn't hit that over because I saw the score. I was like, that's just got to be
yeah,
hitting there. Um,
51 and a half. Ugh.
oh, that's rough. But hey, you know what? All three of us were on Illinois. They got a win. You're only 1 point off hitting your first parlay of the season this early. So hey, it's a new season, boys. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe the
we're
cards are in our
back.
favor.
Yeah, we are so back. God, I cannot wait to hear what Tom has for us.
Yeah, I'll just, since we're giving shout outs to our team, didn't shout out my team last week. We did get a win 45-14 over Sam Houston. KJ Jefferson, absolute animal of a man. Not a huge game from him, but team looks all right. Big game against TCU this week. So shout out to my Knights there. Tom, we will end this segment with you here. Give us your take on week 2.
Well, I'm angry. Look, both you guys are sitting here undefeated, and I'm the first fan that's team is lost. I mean, I'm not used to that.
Didn't have it out on a bingo card.
Look, there's a lot to dive into with this game. Marcus Freeman had an unprepared team that was too wound up from their win at Kyle Field. Guys, the season is 3 to 4 months long, not one fucking week. NIU controlled the tempo, and they forced Notre Dame into mental errors. Riley Leonard, can you hear me? You fucking suck. 2 interceptions. I mean, no receiver had over 45 yards. It's not because the offensive line is full of sophomores and juniors. No, it's because Riley Leonard can't get them the ball, okay? He is worse than a robot behind center. He cannot move. A lot of people took Sam Hartman for granted last year. Riley Leonard is bad. Stop going through the transfer portal. You have Steve Angeli, who's been sitting on your bench for the past 2 years. Notre Dame just refuses to develop quarterbacks. Brian Kelly would have never lost this game. And I love Marcus Freeman. I really do. I really like him, but he has to do better and can't let the team get complacent against teams like this. Shout out to Thomas Hammock. He really did. He had a great game plan. I don't like his team that they beat us, but if I'm looking at it objectively and unbiased, oh, absolutely. I love this for them. I mean, the only saving grace for Notre Dame is that they're ranked after this. NIU, that is. They're ranked 25. So if NIU continues to win, please keep winning, guys. That'll really help them out. Also, I hate to keep using Riley Leonard here, but my God. I must have missed like the first 2 quarters of the game. I had to rewatch it live after it ended, which sucked, knowing that my team lost to NIU. Home opener, fans are rocking. All the freshmen are there, and they see this. Riley Leonard had 11 rushes for 16 yards. He is ineffective when he's not running the football well. Stop going for these dual threat quarterbacks. It doesn't work at Notre Dame. You have to be able to throw the football in the pocket. You went out and got Bo Collins from Clemson. You got Chris Mitchell from FIU. For what? For what? Sam Hartman was better last year throwing 2 guys that should be working in McDonald's. Okay? To be quite honest with you, this is totally on Marcus Freeman, Riley Leonard, the offensive line, piss poor coaching down the stretch. They looked disgustingly bad. And I think what was even worse about this whole thing, NIU's leading receiver had 2 receptions. 2. Do better. Do better. The expectations are higher than this. And you know what? I was really looking forward to this season. 12-team expanded, CFP. Notre Dame's high up there. We got ranked number 5 last week. And I was thinking, that's too high. Yeah, I was right. Committee, you were wrong. Put us there at number 18. You know why? We fucking deserve it.
I mean, it's a fair point to bring up the expanded playoff. I know you're angry, but I guess this is a good season to start that because the season is certainly not over. Maybe if you're a team like FSU, you're kind of in the shitter at this point already, but you guys are still have a lot to work for towards that playoff. So silver lining there, I guess.
Tom, did you see that? Speaking of Hammock, did you see that he reached out to Marcus Freeman after the game and like offered to tell him what Notre Dame's weaknesses were?
Mm-hmm.
And they had like multiple calls and texts and like conversations, and he's like,
coaching problem too, and I hate to bring it up. This is one thing, and I don't want to stay on this topic because I know we got a lot to roll through. Okay, If Brian Kelly was head coach, they win that game 100%. 100% they win that game. But they lose at Texas A&M. There's no way they win that game at Kyle Field with Brian Kelly. Make that make sense, boys. Make that make sense. I mean, Marcus Freeman is young. He's learning. But, guys, it's year 3. Notre Dame is the standard, right? That is the standard for, Midwest football. Outside of you don't want to consider Ohio State the Midwest, but Notre Dame, Michigan, those are your big teams out there. They have to do better. They need better coaching. I mean, Al Golden's defense can't keep us in every game. And if you get a whack-ass quarterback like Riley Leonard, you need an elite coach that works well with quarterbacks. They just don't have it. They don't have it at all. Denbrock has to do better, the OC, guys. I don't even know what to think going at Purdue this week. And look, I got the opportunity to be backstage for an interview with Hudson Card this week with my job, and he seemed pretty confident going into this game. And you know what? We're lucky this game is not on the card. Thank goodness.
All right. That will wrap up the weekly recap here and move us into our first segment, which is 3 and Out, as I pulled up the wrong graphic. Classic. But 3 and Out, we got 3 quick topics here for the week, 3 news stories in college football. Starting off with the first one, this was on this exact week's show last year, and I'm bringing it back because now it has a little bit of staying power. I didn't want to go back and look at our takes from last year until after we did this week's. But number 1 here, we have Texas. They look to be back kind of for real now, like actually for real. I want to know you guys' takes here. Well, I guess we'll start with Andy. He's right out of the gate. Texas is back. Andy, give us your thoughts here.
I mean, what more do you want them to do? They just went on the road, beat a top 10 team, a defending champion. I mean, albeit a very depleted, this is a different Michigan team than last year, but you still went into a venue of 100,000 plus and took care of business, and it wasn't close. I think you date it back to last year. I think they proved they were back, making it to the college football playoff, going on the road and beating Alabama. This is just another year. Steve Sarkisian has proved, that his offense is going to be high powered. They're going to score a lot of points. And they're going to win some ball games down there. So I think they are fully back. I think they're for real. And I think, if who else? I think they are the number 1 contender besides Georgia, the number 1 contender to Georgia, I would say, for the national championship at this point, in my opinion. I know it's way too early to be talking about that, but I would put Georgia, Texas as my top 2 teams in the country.
Hey, at this point of the season, super early, you can throw out any hot takes you want because it's all.
But I don't even think it's that hot. I don't even think it's that hot.
Exactly.
That's how good Texas is.
All right, Tom. Texas is back. Yes or no?
Yeah. Michigan gave up more points than they did in any game last week. That's how good Texas is. Again, like Andy said, Michigan lost a lot of guys, but the Longhorns really came in and hooked them. This is the best quarterback they've had since the VHS era, right? And Quinn Ewers. You can talk about that offense, but my gosh, holding Michigan to 12 points is very impressive. And I think, too, it starts with the guy up top, right? Steve Sarkisian. He's building this team to new heights. Look out, Kirby Smart. Because like Andy said, yeah, it's going to be a big, big problem moving forward to see what's going to happen in the SEC now that Texas is in the picture. And who knows, maybe the rivalry that used to be Alabama-Georgia, does it turn into Georgia and Texas now? That's something that you got to think about.
Yeah, that would certainly be interesting. I agree. We're 3 across the board here that Texas is actually back. I know it's only 2 games, but Michigan, despite the personnel losses, still a top 10 team. I think they're going to finish probably around number 10. I don't know if they'll squeak into the playoff, but still a very good team. But what it showed me is that last season was not a fluke, and that's kind of why this whole Texas is back joke has evolved and just continued to go on and on like a boulder rolling down a hill. But I think it honestly stops at this point. Their recruiting has been great. Sarkisian has everyone in order. They don't make many mistakes, or at least not hysterical mistakes that cost them games. Not even big games, but games against people they shouldn't be losing to. And then you look at their schedule this year. Andy's right. They're probably the biggest competitor to Georgia this year in terms of the race to the top slots in the playoff. But the rest of their schedule, even if they get blown out that game, I know it's expanded playoffs, so you lose one game, you're going to be in anyways. But they lose that game, the rest of their schedule should be, I don't want to say a cakewalk, but it doesn't look all too difficult. If they can go out there and perform, even reasonably well, even if they lost to, throw in Oklahoma there as well, they go into the playoff very easily with those 2 losses. So, yeah, this is a Texas team that's looking good, and I genuinely agree with you guys that they are officially back. Moving into the next topic here in Greenout, it is the Pac-12 rebuild. The Pac-12 has announced that they are planning to rebuild with MWC additions here, and announced earlier today they have accepted, I believe, formally accepted Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State, and Colorado State, who were rumored a few days ago to be applying. What I want to know from you boys is this conference now? It moved certainly last year to a P4. Is this going to be enough? What do they need to do to be moved back into that Power Five slot? Is this enough, Andy?
Well, no, because they have to have 8 to even be considered as like a full conference. So they still have to add at least 2 more teams. But I will say, I think this is a great start. You went out and got Boise State, who's been consistently one of the best G5 programs in the country. You got a Fresno State team that's won a lot of games, or Fresno State program. San Diego State as well has a great history of football. Colorado State plays good football as well. So I think this is a great start for them. Unfortunate for the Mountain West because it kind of feels like this might not be it. They might need to go, raid a couple more teams from there. But, when I'm thinking, what's next? What's the next step for them? Do you go get like a Utah State? Do you go? I know it's not football, but like a Gonzaga would be huge for them. If we're talking about just as a basketball member and other sports as well. Maybe some of the other California state schools. God knows there's like 100 of those. Or like a Nevada maybe or something or something like that. A UNLV, did they make the cut? But you think about these names, right? And I still don't know if that's enough. That's not going to be enough, in my opinion, to get them to be. It's not going to be. It's not the same caliber as the Big Ten, the SEC, hell, even the ACC, not the Big 12 either. So I still, they're going to have to make a big splash and get somebody to either come back or poach somebody from. What if one of these lower tier teams from one of the bigger conferences is like, hey, maybe we go over to the Pac-12 and we have a better chance at, winning conference championships and setting our teams up for a better position in the college football playoff. What happens to some of these bottom feeder teams that were already struggling in these power conferences, right? That you just add 18 teams, 20 teams, whatever the fuck it is. So I don't know. I think they're making the right step, and it's about as good as they could do at this point. But I still don't think it's going to be enough.
Yeah, I do agree. There's still a lot of work to do, but Tom, I want to know your thoughts here on these additions and what you think they need to do to be Power Five worthy.
Yeah, so right, 5 teams applied, and I thought 4 are close to signing or have signed. I don't know what the exact update is on that.
It's happening.
It is happening. Yeah,
They were like the official Pac-12 account
Right.
tweeted with those teams, so it's
Okay.
if it's not official, it's close.
happening.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, this is recency bias, but Boise State, look what they did last week. They took Oregon to the wire. That's not a bad get. They lost by 3 points. Each Mountain West school, though, is bound to a $17 million exit fee, so there are some financial restrictions when it comes to this. And money does talk, boys. Of course, we all know at the end of the day. The Pac-12 is on the hook for a $10 to $12 million penalty fee for every school they acquire because they have that scheduling agreement with the Mountain West. So it really puts the Mountain West in a tough spot. So the Pac-12 is going to be eating a lot of money here to survive. I believe, July 2026, they have to be at least 8 confirmed teams. Otherwise, they have to fold. I guess they'll survive, but is it Power 5 worthy? I don't think so, because all the other 4 top conferences are so power heavy now. And who do you have as your backbone? Oregon and Washington State? Is that really the backbone for this conference? It's something to think about. I know we don't like to think that way. We want to give these smaller schools a chance, but come on, you have one of these schools flying across the country to go up against, a Wisconsin or, a Virginia Tech, something like that, right? A school that is good in a Power 4, but maybe not as good. That's where your backbone is matching, in my opinion. That's the level of talent that they're matching, and that's a problem. It's going to take years for this conference to get back to Power 5 worthy. They have a lot of climbing to do, and I guess this is a decent start. But Brian, it's so new, it's so fresh in the mind. Like, I didn't even know about this before today when we were talking about prep and everything. So I think that goes to tell you right there. There's a lot of work to be done, but they're desperate, and this is what they're doing. So good for them. I hope for their case that it works out genuinely.
Yeah. For me, I'm in agreement with both of your stances here. not a long road because you can go and poach. Like Andy said, they only need 2 more teams. You can poach anyone. But in terms of getting back to Power Five status, I just don't know. With who they just poached, those are probably the 4 best teams they could have gotten. Um, I know to Andy's point about maybe picking off some bottom feeders in other Power Four conferences, you can do that, but that's kind of like a geographical nightmare because the 2 teams left in the Pac-12 are in the very, very northwest of the country. So you're very limited in who you can go get. The only team I'm looking at that looks like a good market team on the rise, they have a good football and basketball program, is UNLV. Maybe you get the Las Vegas TV market as well,
Yeah.
and then you still got to find one. So I'm not sure what you do there. But
What about this, Brian? You go poach 2 really good FCS programs in North Dakota State and South Dakota State.
I was looking at sort of Big 12 area to see who would be a bottom feeder to pull out there, and then I thought of the Dakotas. It's honestly not too far, um, but again, I don't know if that makes you Power Five worthy. It would keep the conference interesting for sure. I'm sure both the Dakota schools would at least consider it. I know they like winning their FCS championships, but I mean, you gotta consider a call to FBS to join a former Power Five conference. So, yeah, that would be an interesting play, I think. But yeah, I'm looking at UNLV, and I don't know. The only other interesting team maybe like Air Force. You get a military academy in there.
Yeah.
Colorado's not too far, so yeah, it's going to be a long road, but at least they're surviving for now. So yeah, we'll see what happens with the Pac-12 going forward. What was it, Tom? July 2026, you said, is our cutoff date?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a little bit of time. We'll see where the Pac-12 goes from here. Then moving into our last topic here for 3 and Out, we're talking about Purdue. Very specifically, they had one of those fun little halftime competitions there. Bring a fan onto the field, make them do something for a prize. This one in particular was a field goal kicking competition. Kid nails all 3, ending with a 40-yard field goal, all right to the uprights. They tell him he's going to win the prize at the game. And then the car dealership who was offering the prize, went back and reviewed the footage and decided he was 0.05 seconds after the clock had expired before he hit the final kick and rescinded the offer. I won't say how this story has ended yet because I want to get you guys' takes first on just what I'll call a PR nightmare for this, what was it, Rohrman Automotive, who apparently doesn't have a great reputation to start with. But Andy, I want to know your thoughts starting off here on just the absolute disaster class of a PR nightmare we're seeing here.
As if the fucking PR for dealerships and car salesmen couldn't get worse. Would make it already is like, oh, they're all scumbags. I lived that life for a couple years. I know how that goes. And it's funny because Bob Rohrman, he's got dealerships over Indiana, up in the Chicago area, and his commercial always gets stuck in my head every time I see one of his license plate because it's a lion and it's like there's only one Bob Rohrman. And so I always fucking say that shit to myself. So when this popped up, I laughed. But yeah, absolute scumbags. Other dealerships stepped up. There's a restaurant that offered him free burgers for a year. Hell yeah. But 0.005 seconds off. You've got to be shitting me. I think they said it was the car dealership's insurance. The car dealership used that paragraph and an explanation for an ad for the next person to try the contest. You know how fucking hard it is for a normal person to hit, let alone three field goals. What, one field goal? One of those being a 20, 30, 40 yarder. Come on, dude. This guy should absolutely get his free 2-year lease. This guy needs to be taken care of. But yeah, PR nightmare. Not good, Bob. Not very good, Bob.
Tom, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, Rohrman Auto should be ashamed of themselves, in my opinion. I think they should do the right thing where the rules properly explained to Zach Spangler, because I watched an interview clip before and it sounded like they weren't. I don't know if that's on Purdue or if that's on the dealership. It's got to be on the dealership, no? Look, he was told that he won. There was a bad miscommunication between, the auto company and Purdue. The kid was kicking college range field goals, guys, NFL range field goals, and you're going to send this to him over email? Do better and give him the car. He won. He won fair and square. Come on. If it was like Justin Tucker or Brandon Aubrey, fine. But Zach Spangler, seriously?
A junior in the College of Agriculture at Purdue. Come on.
Yeah, come on. Do the
My
right thing, guys.
my favorite part about this was that in contacting him to reverse the decision, they mentioned that they had looked over. I don't know if they sent him the video footage, but it said that they had looked over 4 different angles of the footage. So they're just like out there, like with a microscope, trying any possible way to discredit this field goal. It's like, oh, sorry, kid, 0.05 seconds. We can't give it to you. But yeah, my biggest thing was the rules because to me, it's everyone involved. It's sort of sounded like after, the snap happens and he's like in the progress of kicking, like that, you're in progress. The time, if you're kicking a game-winning field goal, the clock goes to 0. The play has already started. You get to kick the field goal.
Right.
So that was kind of my biggest pet peeve about this whole situation. I do understand the insurance decision because all teams do this. All Major League Sports they do this prize insurance, and I guess I'm assuming they would have had their coverage dropped if the insurance told them on a technicality he loses, and then they said no, we're going to force you to pay it. I think they should have just done it themselves. It was a 2-year lease. How much is it going to cost them? But yeah, like Andy said, everyone else stepped up.
Right.
Other car dealerships, the burgers, and then that forced. I didn't put this in the notes. I don't know if anyone has seen this, but it did force. I believe yesterday, Rohrman Auto, because of all the bad PR, decided to reverse their decision from the reversal, and they offered him either the 2-year lease or $5,000 cash, and he took the cash and was quoted as just saying, "I don't want to have to deal with like the rest of it. Like, just get out of my face. Give me the cash. Get out of my face."
Honestly, yeah. Well, yeah, because they're gonna. Yeah, that's a good call. I'm sure he already has a car. What college student wouldn't just take the $5,000 cash?
Yeah, exactly. So all is kind of well that ends well, I guess, in this situation. Just complete scumbags. Rohrman Auto, if you're in the Indiana or Chicago area, maybe hit a different dealership.
There's only one Bob Rohrman.
That'll bring us into our next segment. It is Parlay Party. We got our picks here for the week. The rules, as always, minimum 4 picks and a plus 1,000 payout here. Going with Andy, who was only 1 off last week.
Ugh,
Andy,
1 point off.
run us through your card for week 3.
All right. I don't know. I've cooked this one up this morning, so we'll see how it goes. I'm starting off with Alabama minus 16.5. They're going to Wisconsin. Brian mentioned earlier how, Alabama struggled with USF. It took them pretty much the whole game to pull away in 3 late touchdowns. But I don't believe in these Badgers, guys. I don't think Wisconsin is that good. I think this is the first time that Alabama is traveling to Madison since like 1928 or something like that. It's been like a really long time. Their first trip to a Big Ten opponent since 2011. Madison hasn't hosted a SEC opponent since like 71 or something like that. So this is not something that happens a lot, but I'm taking Alabama. I think they're the better team. I think they win by 3 scores. Boston College plus 16.5 at Missouri. This one's really, really interesting to me. So obviously I think Missouri is a lot better than Florida State. Their offense has been incredible to start the year. But Boston College, they've got something to say on offense as well. They are one of the best teams in the country at running the football. They went over 300 yards on the ground last game, 274 the game before that. Thomas Castellanos is a dual threat quarterback that takes care of the ball. He's got 6 touchdowns to 0 interceptions so far on the year. I think Missouri wins the game. I think Boston College is able to hang around and keep it within 2 scores. Also, Luther Burden is questionable at this point due to an illness. I do think he will end up playing, but that's something to watch for. Missouri's offense can put up points. That's my only thing. Boston College, what are they going to do? They're going to try to run the ball, slow the game down, keep the ball out of Missouri's hands. So if they do that, I think they can cover this spread. I'm going to go Hawaii plus 4.5. They're going at Sam Houston State. Sam Houston State was one of the worst teams in the FBS last year. They just got whooped up by Brian's UCF Knights last week. Hawaii gave UCLA everything they could handle, albeit this is a team at UCLA that's a little bit down this year. But I like Hawaii to go on the road and cover that 4.5 point spread. I think they can keep this within a field goal. And then finally, speaking of UCLA, I'm taking Indiana. I adjusted the line a little bit. I bought a point. I'm taking Indiana minus 2.5 at the Rose Bowl at UCLA. I think they're the better team here. Indiana's new head coach, Kurt Cignetti, has got them playing really well. They hung 77 points on lowly Western Illinois in the Leathernecks last week. I know it's an FCS opponent, but UCLA is in a rebuild mode as well, and I like Indiana here. So it's plus 1141, $10 to win 114.12. After I put this in, guys, I realized I picked 4 road teams. So really, really gambling with it this week. So That's my parlay.
Man, a full road slate. Hey, you never know. You never know. Tom, give us your picks here for Parlay Party Week 3.
I mean, you got to risk it to get the biscuit, right? That's why we do this segment every week. So, yeah. For me, my first leg here, Arizona and Kansas State. I took the over 57.5. I sold a couple points there. I think the actual over under is 60.5. I went with 57.5. Noah Fifita to Tretora McMillan should be fun. Avery Johnson is a decent quarterback. Those offenses will score a lot, in my opinion. That game is actually on Friday night, minus 132. Next up, like Andy, I have Bama, but minus 15.5 against Wisconsin. I sold 1 point there. Minus 115. Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, each averaging over 8.5 yards per carry. Each have 2 touchdowns. They run the ball very well. And then you have Jalen Milroe, too. There's a lot of weapons there offensively for the Crimson Tide. Next up, Oregon State is my third leg, plus 16.5. I believe Andy took this as well, or maybe not. Beavers have 2 running backs averaging over 5.5 yards per carry. Jam Griffin, really good running back. Anthony Hankerson as well. And guys, the Beavers are home, and Oregon just barely survived Boise State by 3 points. And you know what? The Beavers, they have a real chance in this game, not to just cover, but to win outright. The last 2 times they've played the Ducks at home, they've won, and that comes in at minus 118. Washington over Washington State, minus 4.5, minus 110. Will Rogers have played well the first 2 weeks. Big shoes to fill in with Michael Penix Jr. And then Duke, minus 16.5 against UConn at minus 110. I trust the Blue Devils here. UConn, one of the worst teams in the country at NCAA football. And to be honest with you, I think even though that has to be tied for the lowest odds, it's the one that's most likely to happen because UConn stinks. And that's $10 for 211.25.
I like it. I like it. And that is hopefully a mix of home and away games here, or are you also making it hard on yourself with some away games?
Well, one of the games I took the over. I took 2 road, Washington's home. And
Okay,
I believe Duke might be home as well.
Okay, good mix, good mix.
Yep.
All right, for my parlay here, did not do as good as Andy last week. I think only one of mine hit.
Both of them were graded a loss, my friend. That's all that matters.
That's very true, very true. One's just a little bit more embarrassing than the other.
Yeah.
But I got a 5 card here. Starting off, Utah minus 13 versus Utah State. Utah State just not much firepower. Cam Rising back and healthy. That's going to be an explosive offense all year. Again, in my opinion, if not just for Cam Rising himself, 2 touchdowns. I think they can do it. Auburn minus 21 versus New Mexico. They need a bounce back game. That's kind of the theme of my card this week, is that you can't be this bad this many weeks in a row. So Auburn minus 21 against a New Mexico team that's quite lowly here. I believe I sold a few points there, or no, sorry, bought a few points because that's minus 238. Alabama sold about 2.5 points here, minus 14 versus Wisconsin. I think they win this game handily. Honestly, they're shaky to start the season. New coach, new system. But I think it's going to be out of the way. We saw how they recovered after the USF game last season. I think they do it again. 2 touchdowns over a Wisconsin team that, like Andy said, it's going to be tough to produce some points here. That's minus 139. FSU, I mean, they can't go 0-3, right, boys? They cannot. A top 10 team going 0-3 to start the season, almost unheard of. I know it's happened a few times over the past decade, but it's quite rare. So minus 9.5 over Memphis. I sold a few points there, so that's a plus 117 to get me over the plus 1,000 hump. And then again, bounce back game here for Notre Dame versus Purdue. I'm a little scared on this one because at first I just bought a ton of points on Purdue up to like plus 22.5 or something. But I like both equally. I like Notre Dame minus 9.5 and Purdue plus 22.5 equally. But I feel like Notre Dame's going to come into this game really, really angry, and I think they might just pound Purdue into the ground here. So I'm going with Tom's Notre Dame for recovery here. That is 5-card pick plus 1,400 on the nose here. $10 to win 150 and 2 cents. And I believe I've got at least a few home games there. I know there's quite a few road games as well. So me and Andy might be on the struggle bus this week. But yeah, plus 1,400 to win 150. And that will bring us into our last segment. As always, it is Shots and Chasers, games of the week that you got to check out. Starting off in our noon slot, we have, I think, the only ranked versus ranked matchup, someone correct me if I'm wrong, of the week here. It is Missouri taking on Boston College, number 9 versus number 24. Sorry, number 6 versus number 24. Andy, we'll start with you. Who do you like in this game?
I think Missouri wins the game. I think Boston College covers, kind of like I mentioned earlier in that a couple minutes ago when I was talking about my parlay. But like I said, Boston College is elite at running the ball. They're average. They're also, to start the year, they've been scoring a lot of points. Last week they did play Duquesne, so take that with a grain of salt. But they're averaging 42 points a game, 466 total yards, 181 of that through the air, 284 on the ground. So if they can get going on the ground, Boston College can win this game in Columbia. But I just think Missouri, I think Brady Cook, I think Luther Burden, I think he's going to end up playing. I think they're going to be too much. Talk about Marquise Johnson, a guy like Theo Weiss Jr. as well. Those are all threats through the air. Nate Noel on the ground. Marcus Carroll's going to get some carries for the Tigers. But yeah, give me Missouri. Boston College keeps it close.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, like Andy was saying before, I think Castellanos is a very accurate quarterback, 73% completion percentage, turnover free thus far. And Bill O'Brien has BC looking sharp through the first 2 weeks. The upset over Florida State, of course. But Mizzou has allowed 0 points this season. I know the competition's not been good, but Eli Drinkwitz has done a good job. Brady Cook, he's been okay. The Tigers ran for 255 yards and 5 touchdowns last week. They've played 2 mid-major opponents. Luther Burden, just 7 catches on the season, dealing with an injury. We'll see if he plays. I like Mizzou to win outright. Boston College does have a chance to win. With Bill O'Brien at the helm and with the quarterback play, this is not the same Boston College team of previous seasons that we've seen. I think they really hang around here. I think they keep it within 2 possessions, but that SEC firepower is just too strong here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Mizzou as well. But as far as the game, Missouri, we like to talk about their offense. Obviously, we know Brady Cook can cook, if you will, 3,300 plus yards each of the last 2 seasons with 21 touchdowns. But on the defensive side, 2 shutouts to open the season. I know Boston College will be better than both of those opponents, but that's what you like to see from your defense when you're known for the other side of the ball, as Missouri is with their offense right now. But yeah, the team looks good. They're coming off an 11-win season, and honestly, looking at their schedule, again, they're another team kind of like Texas. I think they have a legitimate chance to be a top seed just because of how favorable their schedule is. If they get this win here, I think Boston College is good enough to finish the season ranked, so it'll be a nice ranked win under their belt. The team just looks super solid this year, so we'll see how they do in this first tough matchup for them. As far as Boston College goes, like you said, Bill O'Brien takes over as the head coach, immediately wipes the floor with FSU. I hate the Patriots, but I love watching FSU lose as a UCF fan, so bit of give and take there for me. But yeah, Luther Burden, again, I agree with Andy. I think he's going to play 1,200-yard junior wide receiver, and then they also get the Oklahoma transfer, Theo Weiss. He was there last year, but this is his sort of coming out party here as the number 2 wide receiver. He had 700 yards of his own last season. And yeah, the only thing I'm scared of if you're Mizzou is that Boston College ground game. Their rotation is just like a loaded revolver. Trayshawn Ward, the KSU transfer, Kai Robichaux, and Turbo Richard, incredible name. I'll have 15 plus carries so far this season. And then QB Thomas Castellanos, he's taken off on his feet 15 times himself. So they're going to pound the rock and pound the rock. If you're that Mizzou D-line, you got to keep it in check. But I think the offense here for Mizzou does enough to take them over the hump. Next up in the chaser slot, we have Wisconsin versus Alabama. Like Andy mentioned before, the first on-campus matchup between these teams since 1928. They've only played twice before, and that one was also at Camp Randall. Andy, who do you like here?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Alabama. Like I was talking earlier, I think they win this game pretty easily. I like them by 3 scores. So, that 42-16 win over South Florida, it's a little... that game was a little closer than the score indicates. Like we said, it took them a little bit to pull away. I think they had like 9 penalties on the offensive line, so they're definitely going to have to clean that up, especially against the Badgers, who traditionally do not make a lot of mistakes. But I do defensively for the Badgers. I think it's going to be tough for them to contain Jalen Milroe. And you talk about Bama defensively; they were able to get off the field on 3rd down last week. I believe they held USF to like 2 for 13 on 3rd down. So I think Bama is able to do that again. Tyler Van Dyke has been okay for the Badgers, but I think he's still finding his footing after transferring in from Miami. But I just do not think Wisconsin has enough talent to hang with the Crimson Tide. I will take Alabama in this game.
All right, Tom.
Look, I don't think Tyler Van Dyke has looked bad. It's just Wisconsin's game script with Luke Fickell is not equipped to compete with a team like Alabama. The offense does favor the run more. Ches Malusi with 3 touchdowns. I like defensively what they have. Hunter Waller's a good leader for them, but yeah, this is where it gets interesting, right? Bama did struggle against USF last week, but the final score doesn't tell you that they struggled against USF last week. That's why you always have to go back and watch these games. And I'll tell you something: Jalen Milroe has a bad track record outside of the SEC championship game last year of folding against better teams. They really have to rely on these new guys they got: Ryan Williams, Jam Miller, great name by the way. But the problem is defensively, right? Keon Sabb has 2 picks. Deontay Lawson and Jahad Campbell fly around the field. And looking at it this way, to further strengthen the argument of taking the Alabama spread, boys, Wisconsin, they did not blow out Western Michigan or South Dakota. They allowed both of those teams to hang around. Wisconsin is an old school style football team. They don't blow people out. They're not going to win this game. Bama wins by 20 points.
All right, that is quite a sizable margin. For me, yeah, I kind of agree. I wish it was closer because I'm a big fan of like the Wisconsin fan base. They're always super exciting to watch, super fun to watch. But yeah, I just agree with Andy that they just don't really have it to keep up with the big teams like Alabama this year. I guess what you attack here is the sort of new flavor of this team. Like we said multiple times already this show, they struggled against the USF, which you don't want to be doing if you're number 4 Alabama. So you just maybe start trying to pick at those holes of mismanagement and just confusion, I guess, with this new playbook, with this new playing style. The thing that stuck out to me, though, is for Alabama, and even in the final years of Nick Saban, they have sort of become undisciplined to the point of it being concerning. I know Saban ripped into him a lot last year, and they did sort of, get it together by the end of the year. But last week against USF, just too many penalties, 13 penalties for 129 yards. And then they have 3 turnovers, all lost fumbles. So those are like the building blocks of a Saban Alabama. He's gone for 2 games, and it's, a little sketchy when that's what you're putting out there on the field. The talent is still there, obviously. We know how good Jalen Milroe is, how good that backfield is. But yeah, they really need to shake off these jitters. As far as Wisconsin goes, yeah, they're a little bit untested here. But they do get this game on home soil. Like I said, it's the first meeting at Camp Randall between these 2 teams since 1928, so it has been a minute. But the pressure's on, though. No Big Ten team has ever pulled off a regular season win against an SEC team ranked this highly. I don't think playing jump around is going to be enough to get them over the hump here. And then the final stat that I loved here, there's no more Nick Saban, but Alabama is 16-1 in its last 17 road openers. So interesting stat there. They do show up, when they have to go on the road for these big matchups. So I'm taking Alabama here as well. Next up in the midday slot, we have Oregon State taking on Oregon, another rivalry game. We got a few here on the cards. Andy, we'll start with you. Who do you like to win this one?
Yeah, this is a really interesting game, guys. It's one of the oldest rivalries in college football, and it is no longer called the Civil War, right? I think that might have been a few years, but this is the 128th meeting, the first as non-conference opponents since 1963. This is also the first time these teams have ever played in September. This game has traditionally been played in November, December, dating back to 1945. Oregon with a 68-49, 10 ties lead in this series all time, and I think they get another win this week. I just think they're simply the better team. Look, guys, nobody's going to mince their words when they're talking about the Ducks so far this year. It's been a couple head-scratching weeks, a couple games where you thought, hey, they should run right by these opponents, and they did not. A 10-point win over an FCS opponent in Idaho, and then the Boise State gave them absolutely everything they could handle this past week in a 37-34 win for the Ducks. But what have they done well? Dillon Gabriel has played really well. 84.3% completion percentage so far on the year, leading the Big Ten, 3rd in the nation, 623 passing yards on the year. They have 5 different receivers with at least 6 catches and 70-plus yards. If you look at Oregon State, what do they do really well? That's run the ball. Jam Griffin, Anthony Hankerson, they're both averaging 100-plus on the ground, and new head coach Trent Bray has the Beavers at 2-0 and looking to pull off an upset here. 16.5-point spread. It is a rivalry game. I like Oregon State to cover. I like the Ducks to win.
All right, Tom.
Well, the Beavers have upgraded in one position, the quarterback position. Ukulele is out. Giovanni McCoy is in. He hasn't looked great this year, but he's better than Ukulele. I'll tell you that much. The biggest concern here for me is who is going to replace Damian Martinez, the former bell cow. But like Andy just said, Griffin and Hankerson bring a lot to the table. Each of them bring a different slice of the pie to that offense. So I'm looking at this Beavers team. They have very good, viable players on the offensive line as well. They're coming off a shutout against San Diego State. What have you done for me lately? Well, they've done a lot. They did a really good job against the Aztecs. And then for Oregon, they survived Idaho and Boise State, both at home, by the way. So not that impressive if you ask me. They got Trayshawn Holden from Alabama in the transfer portal. Terrence Ferguson needs to be used more offensively. He's their number one tight end. And then Evan Stewart, a guy that, gets high volume typically in the passing game. Defensively for the Ducks, Jordan Birch, 1.5 sacks for the first 2 games. They have weapons, but guys, I mentioned this about 20 minutes ago, and I'm going to mention it again. Things happen in threes. The Beavers have won the last 2 at home against the Ducks in 2020 and 2022. Oregon State is home. They're pissed that Oregon left. For the Big Ten, give me the Beavers in a upset.
Oh my goodness, calling them early. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're gonna call for an upset like this early in the season, you do it against a team that has struggled like Oregon has so far this season. I think they squeak out another win here. This is sort of reminiscent of like Washington last year, just down to the wire every single game with the talent that they have. A little concerning, but I think at least they survive for now. And I got to root, obviously, for my ex-UCF QB here, Dylan Gabriel. The offense is still explosive. Just their issues, like I said, the Washington curse from last year, letting teams hang around. You can't be doing that. It just makes every game so sketchy, especially in the fourth quarter. 10-point win over Idaho, not great. And then 3-point dogfight win over Boise State. A little, more leeway there because Boise State's a good squad. But yeah, if you're a top 10 Oregon team, you need to be blowing teams out before you get into the meat of your schedule. Their defense needs to step up and get focused. Offenses might not be as potent as Pac-12 teams, but their schedule, they're in the Big Ten now. It's not going to get any easier here. Like Tom mentioned, Evan Stewart now on the field with the Ducks, the Texas A&M transfer, who is arguably, I think, the best receiver they had on their sideline. So that's a good get there to pair up with Dylan Gabriel. Ironically here, Oregon State's QB that was mentioned earlier, Giovanni McCoy, he's an Idaho transfer, so maybe he can spice it up a little bit, use some of that Idaho Vandal juju, and put some points on the board here for Oregon State. He's not bad. He's sort of like a classic transfer to jump up into an FBS Power 5 team like this. That's not quite ranked, but is still good enough to compete. 2,700 and 2,900 yards in his last 2 seasons with the Vandals for 42 passing touchdowns. So the kid's got some skill. He's got some skill. And I think he's going to give the Ducks defense a little bit of trouble here. And then even more transfer portal energy from the Beavers and their running back room. Top 2 rushers, Jam Griffin and Anthony Hankerson, also transfers. Hankerson moving from Colorado. Don't blame him. That just seems to be an absolute trash fire right now. And then Griffin coming over from Ole Miss, where he actually went after transferring out of Oregon State. So he is back. But yeah, I'm taking Oregon here, but I do think it'll be a close one. So this will definitely be on my TV this week. And then, again, another rivalry game here to close out the midday schedule, Washington versus Washington State. The Apple Cup, this is on a neutral site this year because it is no longer a conference game. Andy, who do you like to win this one?
Yeah, another one that has a lot of history, a huge rivalry game that was in the Pac-12, now a non-conference game, Brian, like you said. Huskies are hosting this one. They're 4.5-point favorites. I like Washington State to come in and win this game. You have Will Rogers, the Mississippi State transfer, under center for the Dogs. He had a good week last week against Eastern Michigan. Again, not great competition, but 261 yards, completed 80% of his passes with 4 touchdowns. They got a great contribution from Jonah Coleman, 104 yards on 11 carries with 4 catches for 29 yards through the air as well. I want to talk about John Mateer for a second because talk about a dual threat, boys. 9 for 19 through the air with 115 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But You look at what he was able to do on the ground against Texas Tech, leading the Cougars to a win. 21 rushes for 197 yards and 1 touchdown. Sign me up. Give me the Cougars to get their revenge on the Dogs, and I will take them to win this game outright.
All right, Tom.
I could not disagree anymore with Andy on this one. In fact, no. Washington is my lock of the week. I expect them to cover this 4.5 point spread.
Oh, man.
Gotta be different, Tom.
Let it breathe. Let it breathe.
Oh, that's funny.
Will Rogers has looked good in all seriousness. Just a tad under 79% completion percentage. I know Andy mentioned him transferring, I believe, from Mississippi State.
Mm-hmm.
So the Huskies have a new quarterback, huge shoes to fill, in Michael Penix Jr. He hasn't committed a turnover yet. He has good weapons, too. Denzel Boston had 3 touchdowns in 2 games, and Giles Jackson, a guy who gets high volume at the receiver position, and Decker DeGraff at tight end. Oh, my God. You want to talk about a playmaker. 2 touchdowns on 3 catches for 83 yards. That guy can run routes. Go watch him run routes. Decker DeGraff, such a tight end name. And I like Jonah Coleman on the ground as well. The Huskies defense has also had 8 sacks over the course of their first 2 games, but against subpar opponents. I also like what Jed Fish has done so far with the Huskies, doing similar things to what he did with his team at Arizona last year, right? The second half of Arizona's season last year with Noah Fafita at quarterback is what got Jed Fish this job, since Kalen DeBoer went to Alabama. But John Mateer does everything. He's really, really good. He scares me a little bit. 6 touchdowns passing, over 250 rushing yards through 2 weeks. That guy's a mammoth. And then Kyle Williams has a huge catch radius for the Cougars. However, I think Washington at home escapes here. I think they win by 6 or 7 points.
Yeah, escape is probably the word that I'm going to put to this game too, because I'm leaning Washington in another close one. This midday slot's going to be pretty fun to watch. 2 rivalry games that could go down to the wire. Yeah, if you're Washington, losing your starting QB, a top QB, lose your top 2 wide receivers, you lose your head coach to Alabama. It's a tough way to sort of turn around the season, especially you move to a conference that's notably tougher. I guess it's nice that you get to start off against a slightly weaker opponent in Washington State before getting into the meat of that Big Ten schedule. But they do get a nice replacement in Will Rogers coming over from Mississippi State. He's got a nice arm on him, and then Jed Fish, replacement head coach. But the defense has been pretty good as well so far. Defense has yet to allow a touchdown this season. 2 straight games without giving up a TD. So they're doing what they need to do right now for a Washington offense that's a little depleted. Maybe that'll keep them in the hunt this year. We're not talking playoffs, obviously, but maybe get a nice bowl game if this team can perform. On Washington State side, the offense is cooking for them as well here. 107 points through 2 games, 70 points in the opener, and then 37 in a win over Texas Tech. So, yeah, you guys brought him up. John Mateer, absolutely doing work this season. Those rushing stats, he's going to be dangerous out there, which I can understand why Andy's going to Washington State here. He looks really scary. And then on the ground game, we got Washington running back Jonah Coleman, 100-plus yards in both of his first 2 games here. I think he probably gets over the hump here in this game as well to hit the triple-figure mark. And then Washington State's freshman running back, Wayshawn Parker, also a big play machine. He's got a 54-yard touchdown week 1, 43-yard rush touchdown in week 2. So it's going to be an interesting game. I think it'll be really exciting to watch this one, but I'm going to have to give the edge here to Washington. Moving into our night games here, we have Kentucky taking on number 1 Georgia. I think this is going to be a sweep here, so I guess I should be asking instead, Andy, how badly is this beatdown going to be?
It's going to be about 42-7 is my guess. So Kentucky looking for their first win against Georgia since 2009, their first win in Lexington since 2006. Not a lot of success, but I guess the good news, I guess the good news for the Wildcats is when they play in Athens, they lose by an average of 4 touchdowns. So they have that going for them. The game's not there, but they got absolutely dog-walked by South Carolina at home last week in a 31-6 loss. Their quarterback, Brock Vandegrift, revenge game for him, guys. He is a Georgia transfer, looking to bounce back last week. He's expected to start after going 3 for 10 for 30 yards and an interception in the loss to the Gamecocks last week. In comparison to that, Georgia's starting quarterback Carson Beck was 18 for 25 for 242 yards and 5 scores last week for Georgia, albeit against Tennessee Tech. But yeah, I don't think this is going to be close. I think it's going to be another long day for Kentucky.
Yeah, I think that was Mark Stoops calling you, Andy, to complain
Yeah.
about calling this a blowout.
No shit.
Tom, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, UGA's favored by what? It's up to 24 now, despite them being on the road, which is kind of ridiculous. But look at the product that UK put out last week against South Carolina. It's concerning at home, too. You mentioned Brock Vandegrift. Not only is this a revenge game for him, he won 2 national titles at UGA, maybe as a third-string quarterback behind Stetson Bennett and Carson Beck, but he was there for both of them. Kirby Smart had nothing but high praise for him. And also keep in mind, too, Jamon Dumas-Johnson is also at Kentucky now, another UGA transfer. So they have multiple guys that are former UGA players on each side of the ball. So you have to think that they could know some tricks up their sleeves as far as the playbook is concerned. Kentucky, good trio of receivers: Dane Key, Jamori Macklin, and Barrion Brown. The numbers don't exactly reflect that, though, and that's a problem. The O-line has to get better. Brock Vandegrift has to get better. He's young. Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see if J.J. Weaver can get to Carson Beck, their edge rusher that has 2 sacks, going up against Ernest Green, Xavier Truss, Tate Ratledge, you name it, Dylan Fairchild as well. I mean, those guys have been there for a little bit now. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what UGA brings to the table offensively and defensively as well. Their defense has not surrendered a touchdown yet this year, just 6 total points allowed. And, guys, Carson Beck is looking like a way too early favorite for the Heisman this year. 7 touchdowns to no picks. I mean, they obliterated Clemson. 2 good backs, Nate Frazier, Trevor Etienne, and their receivers. They got a Vanderbilt transfer in London Humphreys, who's been impressive. Everybody thought that Oscar Delp was going to be Brock Bowers' replacement. It's not. It's actually Lawson Lucky who's emerging.
Oh, what a name.
Right?
That's awesome.
A lot of great names this week.
Lawson
man.
Lucky, i.e., just to be clear there, has a touchdown. Arian Smith, Dylan Bell, and Colby Young, the Miami transfer as well, has 2 touchdowns for the first 2 weeks. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting, And Jalen Walker, Shmael Mondone, and C.J. Allen racking up tackles. Malachi Starks has been on lockdown along with Dalen Everett. UGA wins big. I joked before with Andy saying Washington was my lock of the week. I was exaggerating. They're not. My actual lock of the week is Georgia to cover this 24-point spread. Final score, 42-6.
Oh, very close to Andy's. I think you're about to get a call from Mark Stoops as well for that one. Yeah, this is an easy one here. Going with Georgia, number 1 team in the nation. Kentucky just isn't going to be able to keep up. I mean, they're fielding Georgia's basically 3rd string from the last couple of years, backing up Carson Beck last year in Vandegrift, who transfers over. So, I mean, if you can't get past the guy that you're about to play, it's clear that he's going to play second fiddle in this game as well. At least in my opinion. Kentucky fans might have other thoughts here, but yeah, Georgia looking to win its 15th straight game against Kentucky. The most fun fact that I saw looking into this game is that this is the 4th season in a row that Kentucky has to face Georgia while Georgia is ranked number 1 in the nation. So they're serving up beatdowns and beatdowns for this Kentucky schedule here, whoever's giving them that. But yeah, listen, Georgia's defense tied for 4th in FBS, just 2 second-half field goals, allowed 1 to Clemson, 1 to Tennessee Tech, and you guys said it was a beatdown against a number 14 Clemson team that should have been better. They're on, in my opinion, the downswing, but that was an absolute beatdown. Kentucky, they gained just 183 yards last game. That's not great, and you're going up against a much better defense here in Georgia. You can't come out of a 2 field goal game against South Carolina and think that you're going to be able to stick with the number 1 team in the country. Yeah, Vandegrift, the transfer, and then also another Georgia transfer, which make the game a little bit interesting, is linebacker Jamon Dumas-Johnson. 2 Georgia transfers here who are now going up against the beast that they were once a part of. Dumas-Johnson's pretty good, though. He was an AP second-team All-American selection in 2022. He's got 126 tackles, 9.5 sacks over those 3 seasons with the Bulldogs. So maybe he can be the heart of that defense and maybe keep this game close for a little bit and see what Vandegrift can do for them. Staying on the transfer train here, Trevor Etienne, you guys brought him up. The Georgia running back who transferred from Georgia's rival, Florida, went five rushes for 78 yards in his debut. That'll be an interesting one to watch. And then my favorite stat, Carson Beck, obviously not elite, but like Stetson Bennett, and sort of like the QBs that, the Notre Dames of the world seem to get. They produce in an effective way. Carson Beck, 15 different Georgia receivers he was able to get the ball to for a completion last week. when you can spread the ball around to what is basically your entire sideline, it's going to be trouble for the opposing defense. So yeah, I'm going Georgia here as well. I will say a touchdown less for Georgia, but about 7 points for Kentucky. 35-7 will be my prediction. And then closing out the slate here, we have Wake Forest taking on number 5 Ole Miss. Andy, lead us into the end of the night here. Who do you think takes this one?
Yeah, I think this is another one that's not going to be very close. We have a ranked Ole Miss team going to Wake Forest. Wake Forest actually is 2-0 all time in this series. The third matchup between these two schools is Tua just threw a pick 6. Holy shit. Excuse me, gentlemen. I'm sorry. So the story for Ole Miss, it's been Jackson Dart. It's been Trey Harris. They've just been absolutely incredible to start the year. And Wake Forest just gave up 357 passing yards to, hold on, let me check my notes, Anthony Calandria at Virginia. So just imagine what Jackson Dart is going to do to these guys. In their last game against Middle Tennessee, Jackson Dart completed his first 24 passes. That is a SEC single game record, longest overall completion streak of 30 games going back to the opener. So he is also completing 87% of his passes on the year, which has been insane. The bright spot for Wake Forest has been Desmond Claiborne, the running back, 135 yards and a touchdown in the season opener. Last week, he went 21 for 86 and 2 scores in the loss. And I will say, Wake Forest, they were up 30-17 in that game against Virginia, and they ended up losing. So maybe I'm not giving them enough credit, but I think Mississippi rolls here.
All right, Tom.
Now, there's one question I sort of want to bring to the table here, right? Over the first 2 weeks,
welcome in.
Best 2 QBs in the nation, Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers. I actually think Carson Beck is elite, Brian, but I do think right now it's kind of like teetering between very good and elite. I think he's leaning more towards elite, in my personal opinion.
God damn it.
There's Mark Stoops again calling Andy.
Yeah.
The question
Carson
is,
Beck's calling.
That's right. The question is, who is number 3? Who is the number 3 quarterback right now? It's got to be Jackson Dart, no? I mean, look at how he's played. He's certainly been a dart thrower out there. He has the best completion percentage in FBS, 87%, 795 yards, 6 touchdowns to no picks. It helps that he has a good running game as well. Henry Parrish Jr. and Matt Jones. And, Trey Harris is a 5th-year guy. He's looked really good. He already has over 300 receiving yards. And how about Antoine Walls Jr., the transfer from South Carolina, right? Spent 2 years with the Cox, spent 2 years with JMU. So he's been around the block. He's doing really well for them with a couple scores. Banged up last year, but very excited. He had 15 touchdowns in 2021, so I think he's going to make a great addition to this Rebels offense. And good football teams find ways to run the football, which Ole Miss does, and stop the run. Walter Nolan, projected day 2 pick in this year's NFL draft, will give the Demon Deacons trouble in the trenches. Losing to UVA at home is not good. Hank Backmeyer, he's been solid, but he gets sacked a lot, and he creates his own sacks. He has to do a better job getting the ball out quicker. It's going to be tough against the Rebels defense, but he has Damon Claiborne to lean off of. Donovan Green and Taylor Moore and have to step up in the receiving game for Backmeyer. I mean, we'll see what happens, but ultimately, I think Ole Miss wins by at least 3 touchdowns, possibly more. If Wake Forest covers that, it's going to be very close to it. I think Ole Miss surpasses it. I think they win by about 24, 25 points, and Jackson Dart continues to look good out there.
Yeah, I'm going Rebels here as well. I think they just have too much. Lane Kiffin, great recruiter, especially when it comes to just getting absolute weapons on offense. The defense is usually where the holes are in his teams, but yeah, Jackson Dart has looked really good thus far, and Bachmeier isn't terrible. It's not a terrible get for Wake Forest in terms of transfer portal acquirements, but 403 yards in his first start for the Demon Deacons. It's good, but I mean, this is going to be a really tough matchup for him, I feel like, and I don't know if he's going to be able to get it done. Obviously, Trey Harris, like you guys were talking about, the Louisiana Tech transfer, so this is, again, one of those guys, and I think a lot of the reason why people are pro-transfer portal, playing in the G5, kind of outplays his coverage there and gets the call up to a top SEC team. He had almost 1,000 yards last year, just shy 985. Like Andy said, he's already got 309 through the first 2 games of the season. So, he's doing well. He's going to be hooking up with Jackson Dart all game here. Another transfer, Henry Parrish Jr., who actually started with Ole Miss, went to Miami, probably for the money, comes back to Ole Miss after they lose Quinshon Judkins. I don't know if that return was for the money or maybe it's because he was guaranteed the starter role, but he's been doing good so far. 165 yards and 4 touchdowns against Middle Tennessee. So he'll be one to watch as well. As far as Wake Forest goes, coming off a really bad home loss to Virginia. Yeah, like you guys said, blowing that lead in the fourth quarter, not ideal against a Virginia team that's average, I guess. So I don't want to be mean this early in the season. Teams can develop. But yeah, I think this is going to be quite a struggle here for Wake Forest. I think, yeah, at least a 2 touchdown win, maybe 3 here for Ole Miss. That'll wrap up our Shots and Chasers, wraps up the games of the week, and it wraps up the show, week 3 from the Stands College Football Game Day Show. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for watching. We'll see you back here for week 4. Enjoy the games this weekend, and if you want to check out any more content, down in the description we'll have my boy Andy's show and his links down in the description, and my boy Tom Scavetta's links down below as well. Enjoy the slate this week. We'll see everybody back here next week for week 4.